The following is a presentation of the St. Louis Chess Club. 20 international chess professionals compete in St. Louis as USChessChamps.com presents the second annual Winter Chess Classic.
Welcome everybody to St. Louis. It is a rest day for the World Championship, but here we are at the St. Louis Chess Club in the world famous tournament hall that we have, where we're hosting the Winter Chess Classic. Upstairs you are watching live as the players compete in this big tournament, and we're glad everybody is here to join us. Back in the studio, my name is Jonathan Schrantz. I'm filling in once again for Ben Simon. He'll be out for one more day, but we'll be returning on Monday and Tuesday to help wrap up the show. And I am delighted to be here with Grandmaster Jesse Kraai, who's in the studio. And
be here, yeah.
Looking forward to analyzing some of the games that we've been seeing here today. So without further ado, let's go ahead and look at the standings for Group A. In Group A, we have a clear leader. Yuneski Quesada Perez has 4.5 points, and he's playing the second place runner-up right now, Jeffrey Zhong, who has 4 points overall. Sasakiran Krishnan is right behind with 3.5. And we have quite a large part of the field, Darius Swiertz, Sam Sevian, and Hrant Melkumian at 3 points, all in the hunt. What are you looking forward to the most here, Jesse?
Well, definitely the big game of the day is going to be Jeffrey against Quesada, and that game's really interesting going on now, so we're going to spend some time with that. Also, Krishnan's game with Motilev, maybe Sassi has a small edge there. So if Sassi wins that, he's back in the hunt, where he used to be.
Excellent. Yeah, tons to look forward to, and I can't wait to take a look. But first, let's look at the standings for Group B. In the B section, we still have a huge tie at the top with 3.5 points. We have still 4 players, Zavin Andrasian, Nicholas Theodore, Victor Mikalevsky, and Eugene Perelshteyn. And right behind them with 3 points, Lucas Van Forest, JJ Ali Morandi, and Aram Hakobian. And behind them is still people that could theoretically catch, so there's a ton to look forward to here. Is there anything that catches your eye in particular about the B group?
Well, it's really wide open. In fact, I can't remember a tournament where we're way into the tournament already. We're round 7.
Round 7
right?
of 9, yeah.
And anybody could still win this, even the person in last place. And Timur is skydiving, so imagine he wins today. He's trying to skydive his way up to 3.5. Yeah, you're in the running again. So everything's wide open in this one.
Excellent. And with that, let's go ahead and take a look at our tournament format here. In this tournament, the games will be a 90-minute games for the first 40 moves, and then you get 30 extra minutes for the remainder of the game. And all throughout, starting with move 1, we do have that 30-second increment, just to make sure everyone has time to write down their moves. And like a lot of tournaments, we do have these no-draw rules before move 30, just to make sure every game is fighting, as they all have been.
Right.
And just like always, we will be on YouTube, Twitch, and on Twitter with the hashtag Winter Chess Classic. I will be here checking out the chat. I see Dennis Boros in the chat. Hello, Dennis. And I also want to say hello to Barat, Chess Game Blitz, King Lear, Fuzzle, lots of other people that have been here joining us, so it's excellent. We will be looking throughout the show to check in with you guys, so if you have any questions, please do send them our way. And with all of that, let's go ahead now and take a look at the pairings for round 7 in the A section. And we can see up top, we got Alexander Motilev versus Krishnan Sasakiran. Also, Ray Robson is taking on Sam Sevian. Darius Swiertz has white against Hrant Melkumian. Miro has white against Alexander Shimonov. And Yunieski Quesada is playing Jeffrey in our game of the day. Here again, we have the 2 tournament leaders. This promises to be one of the most exciting games here in the A section.
Yeah, this is a great game, and Jeffrey took a I don't know if it was a controversial decision, but an interesting decision to sacrifice a pawn early. And let's go to that moment, because here you can see that black is a pawn down. So let's go to the moment. Here we are, and let's just set the tone for what's going on in the game in general. Black has this, I'm just going to say some obvious things. Black has the c-file. His knight has this square. The bishop's kind of poor at the moment, right? This bishop's also especially poor. So Jeffrey needs to fix some of his pieces, but there's no real reason, especially with the c file, that we should believe that black is actually worse. So you have yourself a question. Now, most players would take on g3. White has just played knight g3, and they would take on g3 and then figure it out. And I think that's fine. You could take on g3. I think you're okay. At that point, you're just going to work on fixing your bad pieces. Instead, Jeffrey does this kind of impressive thing. I don't know if it's objectively correct, but it's still impressive. He gets ready to say, I'm going to give you a pawn.
Wow.
And this is the way it goes down. Takes knight h5, takes bishop f6. And so you stare at this position for a second. Let's talk about what happened. The bishop that was poor is now amazing, right? And the knight has, in addition to c5, it also has e5. And of course you have this incredible unopposed bishop with the dark squares. The problem that gives me a little heebie-jeebies is not so much that we're down a pawn, but that this guy isn't out. If he was out, I would have, I'd rather be black. But because that guy has grief, I'm not so sure about it. So let's talk about White's pieces for a second. White has two pieces that are challenged. This bishop is very ineffective, where it's slamming up against his own pawn. And this knight on f4 is awkward. It needs some kind of job in life. So let's take a look at how things went. Queen d2, knight c5, rook a c1, queen b6. All that strikes me as logical. And White plays calmly h3 now. This move here, maybe Jeffrey, it's interesting. Look at it. It's also a very calm move.
Yes.
Which
just for Luft, or what are we doing with h3?
Well, h3, yeah, h3 makes
h2
sense
square for a knight.
with Luft. But bishop g7, it's funny because it suggests that black believes that he is in absolutely no rush at all and can just sit on this position. Mm-hmm. Whereas for me, I feel like there is a big rush to do something with this guy here on b7. So I would like to see something like a5 or b4 to eventually get the bishop out. But right, Jeffrey's just like, no rush.
No rush.
No rush. That allows b4. And here's an interesting decision. It's funny that we're going to see this decision again. We're going to see this exact same position again in a slightly worse situation for Jeffrey. The choice is simple. Do you invade with knight a4, or do you take the bishop?
Yeah, taking on d3 does seem appealing.
The bummer about taking on d3, and I'm sure why he intuitively didn't want to do it, is that bishop is one of the pieces he's trying to work against, right, to say it's bad. The real negative, though, about knight a4, in my mind, is that this knight really didn't have a job. But then all of a sudden, it's going to come back to e2, and it will have a job, right? Not only are you touching this square, but at some point, maybe we're going to reroute the knight into d4, into c6, or something like that. So all of a sudden, the knight will do something. White took on c8. He could have easily played knight e2 first. And taking on c8 is also presenting black with an interesting question, because the bishop, normally you would take with the rook, and that's what Jeffrey does, but the bishop's so bad, playing takes and like bishop d7, not such a bad move. So, by the way, I wanted to go back and show something about I forgot to say one thing about the bishop, the knight takes variation. If knight takes, you have rook c4, and with very good play. And you can feel the power of the bishops in this position. So I think White needed to play queen takes. And a5, what does White do? He has to keep the bishop contained, right? But notice here, this is a good scenario where either rook a8 or some kind of queen move, black will own the a file. I guess queen a6 is the most sensible. He will own the a file because of this bishop. And look at how strong it is. It really is an amazing piece.
Yeah, and that's the whole purpose behind that sack was to get the two bishops and this dark square control. So
right.
Now you can see it in this variation.
So let's look at what happens. Snip, snip, knight e2, knight b2, rook c1, rook e8, knight g3. So the knight on g3 is now in a slightly better square than on f4. And look at what happens, takes.
All right.
So you're getting almost the same situation, but this one is definitely better for white when we compare them, because here white has the file and his knight is in a better spot, right? Jeffrey now pursues a5 and then rook c8. So this is an interesting position. You know, Jeffrey's playing it so calmly that that it suggests that he really doesn't fear anything, even though he's down a pawn. I'd be a little scared. I'd be a little scared, but it is true that it's going to be difficult for white to actually figure out a plan. So, by the way, you know, when we left, we were talking about the game Shabalov-Quesada yesterday. And Quesada, I analyzed with them afterwards, after the broadcast, and Quesada has a really interesting take on that position where he just felt like, even though I thought he was lost earlier, he just felt like, no, I'm fine. And here also he traded off the rooks, and I'm going to guess he believes he has some kind of advantage here. But yeah, it'll be really interesting to see how that might come about. If black is able to open up the bishop on d7 at some point, maybe with f5, just some way to open up the bishop, then Jeffrey could dream of even winning the position. And let me do my favorite dogmatic trick with the bishops. Let's count some squares. This guy's got 8 because he's in the middle, and this guy's got 6, so we got 14.
All right.
Right? All right, let's do my dogmatism here. F8, H8, that's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 for that guy. Then we got 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. And as the position opens, those squares will simply become more and more. So that's a way to think numerically about the power of the bishops as the position opens and what they control. Okay, let's move on to our Group B match.
And yeah, let's just check in really quick here with our chat. We got a pretty interesting comment from Name Surname, who said, I don't know how I ended up here. I don't know how to play chess, but they somehow found us. So thank you very much for coming and joining us, and hopefully you stay for a while and learn a little bit.
Yeah.
And we can bring you up to speed, guys, with the pairings for the B section. In Group B, with the white pieces, we have Eugene Perelshteyn taking on Joel Benjamin. Nicholas Theodoro has white against Zavan Andrasian. Those two, they're both in the lead with 3.5 points each, so some of the leaders, a very big game. Victor Mikulewski has white against Robbie Kevlashvili. JJ has white against Aram Akobium. And Timur is playing another very interesting game against Lucas Van Forest. He never fails to disappoint us.
Yeah. Timur needs to win this game to get back in the hunt. And he has truly taken on, played a decision that I would call a skydiving move against Van Forest, who is tactically very gifted. And I think Timur he's getting himself in a little bit of trouble, but the game is still wide open.
Well, yeah, we're definitely going to have to take a look at this one.
Yeah,
let's see what you're talking about.
Just optically, I'm going to go back a couple moves, but just optically, you can feel the pressure of black's pieces in the white position, and the lack of development of white, the knight on f1, the bishop on d2, the rooks. So black definitely has clear compensation. I'd much rather be black. But it is true that if black can't find a way into the position, white will probably be able to find some way of negotiating maybe an e4 at some point. I want to talk more about this position, but I just want to roll through how we got here. We had a queen c2 Nimzo from Timur. And one thing about this queen c2 Nimzo is what happens usually is white sacrifices time, not material, but time, to get the dark square bishop. And it is therefore actually a very controversial and enterprising opening. There are many different ways that black can play this position here. Van Forest plays d5 and b6, bringing out his bishop. Great. b4. So here's where I feel Timur skydives. On queen d5.
Wow, yes, offering the c-pawn.
A sane person would take the queen and I believe have totally reasonable chances in the endgame. Let me just, I don't know, queen takes, knight takes, and put your bishop somewhere on d2 or b2. Bring your king up. I'd rather be white. The whole reason I think, people like this queen c2 Numzo thing is eventually that dark square bishop can become strong. However, Timur,
yeah, he went for it,
that's a skydiver right there, because you're gonna jump out of the plane and it's not clear you're gonna land, because the c file is going to be opened, and black's pieces are going to rush in, and it's going to be much more difficult to play with white. And as evidence of that, just look at Timur's clock. He's got 8 minutes left for the rest of the game, and he has just a lot more to think about, whereas black is just going to try to occupy the light squares and take over the position. Let me just roll through this. There are several different moves that black could have played here, but it all makes sense to me, so I'm just going to roll through this next couple bits. Knight c3, queen f3, knight e7. Black needs to move the knight out of the way for the rook to come in. There are other ways to play this position, I'm sure. And that makes it harder for white, honestly, because there's so many easy plans for black, and white has to be aware of them. Rook e1, knight a4. Now, I want to talk about a theme of the game that's going to be in our the live position as well, is that the black rooks and the knights all want to land on squares on the c file. However, since the juicy squares are all in the c file, black's counterplay can kind of get in the way of itself. Like, for example, that knight was beautiful on c3, and honestly it hurt me a lot actually to move it because it was such a beautiful piece. So it got out of the way, though, because the rooks wanted to come to a dance. So let's take a look. Knight f1. The knight is not great. Knight f5. You could also have taken on f3.
Yeah, he offered the possibility of doubling the pawns. But.
Right. In fact, I thought that was quite strong. And then knight f5, because in addition to getting this knight prepared to do something like knight d6, white also would have to worry about knight h4. For example, on bishop d2, the natural bishop d2, knight h4 I think just ends the game immediately. But okay, he played this knight f5 move, and let me just show a simple trick. If e4, there's queen d4. That's the reason why e4 doesn't work. Queen d1, hitting the knight on a4, b5. And that's just a simple positional move where we're aiming to occupy the light squares. And maybe I'll just say something about that. This is a dark square bishop, right? That's pretty obvious.
All the pawns on the dark squares.
So we're going to, all those pawns on the dark squares, and we want to put the light square blockade upon white. Again, let's look at the trick. If e4, we have queen d6. So bishop d2, and now our friend the knight comes to look at the light squares. f3, fighting for the light squares, can't be wrong, and rook fd8. I'm sure there were other moves there too. But now let's think about the theme that I mentioned before. This knight, for example, he would love to come to c4, and maybe he will, but he's going to be in the way of Mr. Rook when he does so, right? So there's several things for him to think about. White also has to wonder, is this ever going to pop me open like a can opener with e5, right? So I would love to be black. I don't like the skydive. I don't want to take that pawn on c7, but that's what you're going to get. You're going to get a game of suffering when you take on c7. But it's true. Black still has to prove it here. He needs to do something. But, honestly, in this position, the compensation is so great that we could even compare it to the game we first talked about with Jeffrey's position, where arguably the pawn, Black isn't necessarily playing for a win, but he's got something in return in this form of the bishops. And the point I'm trying to make is, in a similar way, when we look at the Van Forest game, even if Black didn't do anything, right? Even if he just sat on the position, it should still be enough compensation. Of course, though, Van Forest is definitely going to try to knock him out. And we just had, after rook fd1, we had queen b1, knight c4, and rook e2. And it's just, the pieces are a little ugly. They're more than
so
a
it looks
little
like,
ugly.
Yeah, maybe rook e2, he's trying to play bishop e1 and knight to d2 and slowly untangle. And if you get plenty of time, if I'm allowed to do everything I need to do, I might end up a pawn.
Sure,
We'll see
and
what black comes up with.
One thing I'm sure Van Forest is thinking about now is, okay, white's going to play bishop e2, but to give an indication of how tied up white is, he can't play knight d2 because of knight c3. He would love to play bishop f2 so he could play e4, but again, knight c3, bam, I'm forking everything. It's going to be very difficult to untangle this position. But it's also a question of like what Van Forest now wants to do. E5 feels natural to me, but I'm sure there are other moves in this position that black could try to pop him open with. Maybe even f5 at some point, where it make him think about f4, just gaining space as well. So very promising position for Van Forest. And should we move on to some other games?
We certainly should. And
All
while
right.
you go ahead and find what you like, we're having a big discussion here about what food we like in different countries. And so far, the chess consensus is tacos. I do happen to like tacos. Have we got another game?
Oh, we've got a lot of games. Let's look at Saucy's game. And pretty interesting stuff where Motilev has sacrificed a pawn. And it was a very, one of these e4, e5 games that are very maneuvering and not so fun looking. But the nice thing about them is they always turn into fun. Because something, you're maneuvering and then it's going to become tactical and positional, in a deeper sense later on. And in this game, let's look at this position here. Right, let me get this right. So after rook f7, the knight on c1 is poor, and Motilev makes a very interesting pawn sacrifice here. He says, all right, knight e2. And I will give you the chance to take this pawn, and if you don't take the pawn, I'm going to fix my knight and bring him to g3.
I love taking pawns.
So black says, all right, I'll take a pawn. And that's a nice vision, actually. I think it's very instructive because white had a bad piece, and that piece is now fixed. Black could have taken, but he says, no, I'm coming back. And yeah, there's a sense here where white has at least compensation and is looking to do things like c4 now. Knight d5, knight e4. And that's where we're at. I feel like, the extra pawn definitely not such a big deal here. But Saucy's fine, and he can think about knight f4 whenever he wants. The thing that he's going to have to worry about a little bit is c4 going to pop him open?
It's
right?
coming at some point. Yeah.
And weaken that a4 pawn.
Alrighty.
Okay. Can I show another game?
Please do. Yes. Yeah, we're still talking about food here in the chat. So we got some love for ceviche and arroz con pollo. A lot of Latin viewers, so talking about some pretty delicious food.
Here's this game between my friend Eugene and my friend Joel, and it has been a real fight. And I told Eugene that if he's wanted a chance at this game, he was going to have to rip Benjamin open. That's what I said. Things, though, started very well, and they've gone bad. And I want to talk about it a little bit. This is kind of our beginning situation where Benjamin has been playing a lot of moves that I think are controversial. And G6...
Sort of his thing, though, right? He likes to play sort of unconventional in the opening.
I guess. I don't... he's had such a long career. Anyways, G6... Let me just say, I'm a dogmatist. The bishop on f8 is already out, so you don't need another pawn move to get him out. So I'm opposed to g6, and I'm really opposed to bishop f3, because you're developing the bishop on f1. Like now, white doesn't need to make a pawn move, and this light square bishop really is going to be a terror. So here we go: knight c6, d5, castles, takes. G4, very nice. H4, H5, takes, king B1, beautiful. Queen F7. And I would say up to here, Eugene has played really a flawless game. I love this position for white. If someone either clearly better or winning. Multiple moves to try here. Bishop g5, bishop d3. Eugene makes a choice that on a practical level maybe isn't right. He plays takes. I don't think this ruins anything. But on a practical level, the reason I think it's a little suspicious is it gives black 3 choices, all of which are not entirely clear to evaluate.
Yeah, at least. Might even be 4 choices, yeah.
Good.
Pawns and 2
That's
knights.
4. I would say this choice is not going to be. I didn't consider that knight takes because this knight taking makes more sense because you want to open this dude on g7.
Lots of choices.
All of those moves were possible, and I think Joel definitely, being in a bad position, I like his choice. He plays knight takes d5. I like it because now he's going to go from a passive position to an active position, and it's right here where I think Eugene loses the thread. I guess you can't you can't allow him to wreck your structure, bro. You can't do that. So I was looking at this, and the only thing I came up with was knight e4. Is it scary? Yeah, it's scary, and it's going to allow Benjamin to steal this pawn. But the bigger picture is that this knight is going to come to g5. No, so we can give up a pawn. We can give up 2 pawns.
And with the rook hanging there.
Well, we're going to move the bishop.
All right.
Probably d3. We could think about bishop e2 as well, right? We could even think about rook h3. But the bigger point is just that my structure stays whole. And one reason to not care so much about the pawns is now with that unopposed light square bishop, it's going to be about, and the opposite sides castling, it's going to be all about who has the initiative. That's going to be the question. And here I think it's definitely white who has the initiative. And he has this choice of bishop moves or rook h3. All of them look pretty good to me. Instead, Eugene, he played bishop d3, snip. Well, that's got, if you're suffering as black, you got to like seeing that, right? Rook a d8, let's bring the rook in. Bishop e4, snip, snip, knight d5, and now I don't know who's better, right? The knight takes c3 is coming, and then this is a sad move to play, bishop d2. You know things haven't gone well when you got to play bishop d2. Queen f6, good, we're hitting the c3 pawn, and Perelshteyn, king a2. All right, so here's an interesting moment. This is black's moment of truth, I guess, because I'm going to assume that what Joel thought, and this is probably correct, is that if he took and traded everything out, that he was not better here, and that he deserves more from the position given what Eugene has given him.
Right, yeah, and you may have worried here, perhaps this is more equal than it should be. He's hoping for more here.
Right, and arguably you could just say that if anybody's better, it's white in this position. So, Joel plays b5, and let's think about it. It does several things. It prevents c4. I don't know if white actually wanted to play c4 because of the queen b2 stuff going on. Just the opening of that diagonal worries me. But now with b5, there's several other ideas with b4 and a5. And it's starting to get really spicy for Eugene here. And they're going to run into time pressure. And one thing I just want to say that's interesting about this position is what you can now see is that the initiative has switched to black. And then the opposite sides castling, the real bummer happens when it switches. Because it's so much more difficult now for white to get something of his own on the king side. And if he just has to sit back and like take the blows from black, I mean, they're easy moves to play. They're moves like b5 and b4 and a5, and they're all coming. And in time pressure, so much easier to play for black, even though Joel is in. I'm going to guess Joel is going to head towards his habitual time pressure. and he's already getting there. He's there at 8 minutes, but I think it's going to get worse. So we'll keep an eye on that.
Definitely have to keep an eye on this game. We're doing good here. Still talking about food. Talking in Spanish mostly. We do have a moderator that is, well versed in Spanish. We got Dennis LaRue moderating the chat today.
Oh, cool.
So please keep your comments coming in English or Spanish.
Let's take a look at what happened in Timur's game here. So rook e2 and e5 is somewhat predicted. Snip, snip, knight g3, and he just goes back. So now Ben Forrest has definitely fulfilled the dream of the rook fd8 move several moves ago, and he has opened both files. But again, the thing we'll have to say about Timur is he hasn't been cracked yet, and now he does do his bishop e1.
White has more pawns.
White has more pawns indeed. And someday he's going to want to play things like e4. And one thing that Black maybe didn't think about enough is this knight on a4, it's like both knights want to use c4, right? They both want to use c4. And the bummer, of course, with the knight on c4, as we've said, is that it's blocking the rook. So it's like this embarrassment of riches that Black has. Every piece is looking great, but they're kind of they're in the way. It would almost be better if we could trade that knight on a4 off for something. Yeah. So I think this is a fantastic game. We might get Timur in the studio. Every time he wins,
that's right,
we're going to skydive with him. And queen takes c7 was the true skydiving move. We'll see if I have a feeling if he wins, he won't regret it. If he loses, he's going to regret it. Okay, queen e5 was just played. And these are the kinds of niggling threats Black is going to have to worry about. Is he threatening the pawn? I'm going to guess he actually isn't.
Or is he thinking about knight c3?
Right, so there's all kinds of stuff where we're just looking into the position. And, it's unclear. Would I play knight c3? It doesn't end the game for White, but at least it gets rid of my silly knight over there, right? Of course, trading is not exactly what we want. White has a lot of potential moves. He is in time pressure. We could play knight e4. We could think about maybe e4. That feels loose to me, but we could think about it. We could think about maybe rook a2. However, Timur skydives. He skydives on queen e5. He played f4 just now. We're going to get some moves pretty fast and furious now because both players are in a little bit of time pressure, especially Timur. And f4 doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel right at all.
Didn't see it coming.
Because you're weakening yourself and you're putting that pawn on the dark square where later you're going to want to do something like e4. And now that's just going to make it harder to achieve. The good news about f4 is at least you've got now these light squares covered by the knight and the queen. So at least we have like a complex of squares over there that we're controlling. I'm going to guess that Black has several reasonable moves with this queen here. Yeah, there are several reasonable moves with the queen, as long as you don't take the pawn on e3. The simple one would be to come back to d5, and you could even go into the endgame with queen d3. That looks reasonable. Okay, so we're going to check in with that. I like that.
We do have a request from somebody here on YouTube,
Sure.
Artak Manukyan, saying, please show my friend Zavin.
All right, let's check out
We should definitely go
Savin.
ahead and take a look at his game.
Oh, yeah. Thank you very much for the request, because this is definitely a game that's both interesting and interesting for the standings. Yeah, this has been complicated for a long time. The structure has now shifted. Let me go back a touch and look at this position here. We have a Carlsbad structure, and Savin's pieces are all pretty much optimal. Notice that he's got all of his pawns on light squares, and that is working well with his unopposed bishop. And in contrast to what Perelshteyn's light square bishop once was, this guy is running into a wall of pawns, right? So it's a difficult position to play, maybe especially for White, because you've got to ask what you are trying to achieve. Black simply plays rook c8, h4, h5. We're just going to create that wall of pawns. White needs to create an opening on the king's side. Bishop g5, queen f3. So the dream for White would be to play g4 at some point. queen d6, nice and slow. We're just going to do a little tic-tac. Oh, and white is the one who plays
to keep
queen
playing.
g3. Now, Theodore, as you know, is a madman. He likes to play, and he revels in weird stuff, and that's okay. I love him for it. But
It's certainly been paying off around here as he's just crushing everybody.
I
Every
think
weekend tournament.
The proper thing there was to take a draw. And honestly, I don't think Savin should be interested in a draw here. I like his position a lot. I don't feel like, especially with the knight way over here offsides, that that white has a true potential for attack. I think white needs to achieve both g4 and the bringing around of the knight. So queen d8, knight d2, here it comes, but queen b6. This is the problem of moving the knight. And now we have a question. Rook b1, and here Savin says, well, now that your rook's funny, and it's no longer going to do this to me. It seems like, what was it doing there? Well, now on e5, you have some bigger questions. Like, are you going to take it and open everything up? Maybe he should have, but we saw queen h3, rook cd8, knight b3. Theodore is so creative. So the idea is if you take on f4, I can snip on e8 and then snip on d7.
Very nice.
It does allow e4. Bishop e2, knight f8, bishop e3, knight e7. And this looks like it's better for black. One interesting question, though, is how useful is that pawn on e4? I'm not so sure about the pawn on e4. Is the question of like, is black intending to attack over there? I don't know. Yeah, the pawn, it looks power. It's nice. You got a little space, and your rook on e8's doing some stuff. But is it really that much better than on e6? I'm not sure. It's interesting, but we know what Theodore is going to do because he's a madman. He plays g4. And besides being a madman, we need to point out that what this move truly is about is trying to open the position for the light square bishop. So if he gets another move, he's going to be looking at h5. I'm not sure about this position. f5 comes, and I guess I believe in Savin's position. But it's a long way till we're done. It's a long way. The point might be now to play knight h7 next. Let's say bishop e2, knight h7, or knight e6. And then if h5 to ask whether we get away with g5.
Yeah, also f4 might be coming at some point there.
f4 might be coming at some point, yeah. So this looks good for Savin. There's all kinds of tricks, though. Imagine after knight e6, we can throw in that move. Yeah. It's a wild one.
Yeah, it's very fascinating.
Yeah.
And I'd like to thank everybody who's been staying up late just to watch our commentary.
Yeah.
We got people from South Africa, people from Denmark, so thank you guys for staying with us.
All right, Jonathan, I want to just get your intuitive take on this position. This is the current position, and we're going to call it our key matchup here with Quesada and Jeffrey.
Well, I guess, yeah, just first thing, just off the bat, it does look like now that these knights are starting to get some squares. I don't know what happened with g5 there. I tend to like white here. Also, maybe I can just play g4, cement that f5 square, also get the h5 square so I can play knight g3 and get my knights going. Also, how many more pawns do I have? One?
You got one?
I like having more pawns. I like white here.
Well, let's think about Jeffrey's last move. It definitely is controversial, giving white the f5 square. But the idea is that I now am looking to cement a bishop, say, on e5.
Yeah, was his idea also just to stop f4? Sorry.
Right. So that we can do bishop e5.
Just wondering if that gives up more squares than you're preventing.
Does give up some squares. I do want to say that I think g4 is probably a mistake because then you are completely surrendering all the dark squares, right? then bishop e5 will come, and yeah, the dark squares are over.
Yeah,
they're over there.
I'm up a pawn.
Okay, okay. So I think an interesting thing actually to think about here is it's a very fascinating position because, we have the intuition of being up a pawn, but kind of long term, it's interesting to think about where White's king is going to be safe. Imagine bishop e5 coming. So you could play like g4, bishop e5, king g2. Sure, you could think about that. Another one might even be g3. That's a little bit more sober, but also then here's the weak point. And our queen, our black queen, she's getting ready very soon to play moves like queen a2 or queen a1, and then think about doing stuff like that. Imagine you put the queen on f1 now. It's starting to look kind of, it's over.
It's over. Pawn on g4, knight on g3, stopping you.
Well, okay,
that's all I'm on about.
Let's follow through with your instinct. Bishop e5, knight g3.
And thanks to King Lear, who's supporting me in the chat.
Okay.
Wait, so what do we do here?
Is that what you wanted? Bishop e5 and knight g3?
Sorry, I looked at the chat for a second. No, probably I play king g2. I don't know how much of a difference there is.
No, that's totally reasonable. Right, yeah, this... I do want to say, I don't like to give him these dark squares, but maybe he is going to have... It is true that in this position that we have on the board with g5, White is going to have to make some decisions about where to put his king. At some point, maybe now, queen a4 would come.
Yeah, queen a4 makes some sense.
I imagine queen a2 and queen a1 are also possible.
I have to try to make knight c6 work. If you play queen a4, I'll have to take a second here to see if knight c6 I can get away with.
You could think about it. I mean, I can also just get my pawn back.
Don't take my pawns. That's never been your thing.
I'm sorry. I was just, I got some things now. Okay, let's look at what happened. G5 and White played queen d2 and Jeffrey calmly played h6. And so Quesada, he has to make a difficult decision about how to fix his king. Yeah, it's really interesting that even though the rooks are off, the white king has some grief. And the knights, too, are a little funny because, they don't have that many great squares. And once you move the knight on e2 away, of course, then the knight on d4 is going to be loose. Another g3 we talked about. Knight g3 could also happen, and that, of course, walks straight into bishop e5. And it's like, well, what are you supposed to do after that? Right after that's a big pin. So I think I'm actually taking a lesson out of this game because I felt that Jeffrey was doing this thing where he's just going to be able to hold the position with the bishops. But the more I look at it, it's really surprising that even though we're down a pawn, and it's a center pawn, Nimzovich told me that the center pawns were more important. Even though it's a center, it's a center pawn, it feels like if anyone has grief, it's White. And White's the one who has to solve his problems.
Come on, I'm up a pawn. I love being up a pawn. All right, but we'll definitely have to keep an eye on this one, see how it plays out.
I like having arguments with people about that. No, I do. It's an interesting, it is like this position, I think if you gave it to different people, they would have different opinions.
And it also surprised me coming from Jeffrey. I remember a much younger Jeffrey. He's been around the club for a long time, playing in all sorts of U.S. junior championships ever since we've been doing them. And even when he would be here and he'd be playing with all the other juniors, I remember one time he was showing, somebody played, another junior, the Smith-Morra Gambit. And he said, oh no, you're down a pawn, you're lost. Like, it's over. You just blundered a pawn. You can't do that, and it's over. So I know Jeffrey has a sense, at least young Jeffrey did. Maybe more mature Jeffrey sees lots of compensation and likes bishops now. But I know at least young Jeffrey, not a big believer in gambits or being down a pawn.
Yeah, and let's look at that position again. It's a really interesting, intuitive sacrifice with knight f4. Again, my intuition, I would have been hesitant because this bishop isn't out, and even in the game, I'm sure if we get Jeffrey, he'll say, well, the first time I could have taken on d3, I should have done it. That much is obvious because the position improved, right? To compare that again, let's go. Yeah, after b4, this was his first moment to steal the bishop.
Bishops are better than knights. Take it.
And then a5, and then we could have got a slightly better version. But right, he ended up getting this position and then took the thing. And yeah, it's this interesting thing where he willingly trades the rooks. Normally when you sack something, you want to keep the rooks on so that, you know, you got some firepower left.
Right, exactly.
But you're just fixing the bishop. There's no real entrance squares. Queen 8, we improve the queen, and then boom, g5. And yeah, it's a go for it move. It's like, no, I'm the one who's going to do something. Now, queen d2 looks very natural, but notice that one dream of White's could have been to say, I'm going to keep your queen on a6 by threatening this pawn. And what White is doing with queen d2 is abandoning that and more going into a bunker mode, because the queen is now, the black queen is going to come in, and she's going to be like a pinball going in there, you know, because there's so many weak squares to touch. There's b4 and e4, and of course the knights and this guy, and if she gets here, there's a lot of juicy entrance squares. I don't think it's that easy for White to stop all of them.
I do have one question for you.
Sure.
I just took a peek here at the chat. Old Uncle Bob says, Jeffrey is a future U.S. champ. Do you think that's something that is realistic with all the strong players? He is something like 17 points away from 2,700 at this point in the live chess. Obviously crushed Isle of Man. Came in here, won his first 2 games, and he chilled out a little bit with lots of draws. Do you think he's talented enough, this guy?
I definitely think it's possible. And remember, becoming U.S. champ is easier than becoming the U.S. #1.
Very true. Yeah.
Right? Like Sam Shankland won the U.S. championships this last time around, even though Fabi had a great tournament. So even if you have a great tournament, it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to win the U.S. championship. But yeah, I think he is very strong, and a beautiful goal for him. I think the next clear goal is, can he become part of the U.S. chess team?
For sure.
And that's like the big question. I think I like his chances there. I think that's the near-term goal. And obviously breaking 2,700.
Which could be in the future if he keeps playing as well as he does. If every tournament you gain rating points, and you're so close.
Yeah, and I say, we have talked, the first 2 rounds we were talking a lot about Jeffrey, and he had some draws in positions where I think he could have won. So he won, he has won the first 2, and then he drew the rest, right? So it would be nice if, of course, he's looking for a win here. And in terms of the standings, right, he needs to try to overtake Quesada. Beating Quesada now would really be nice.
And I would like to read one more chat, because when somebody says something funny, as Jim Bailey has just said about you.
About me.
Jesse Kraai is a revelation. Wonderful animation and emotion for an Android. So thank you guys for the comments. Keep them up.
Let's look at our friend Theodore and Savin. So,
wow, a lot has happened.
Let's look at how this happened. Bishop e2, knight e6 as predicted, knight c5 as predicted, queen c7, and now h5. And it's getting hot. It's getting hot, and at this point, I don't know who's better, but I think I'd rather be White, because even though those pawns look very frightening, it's a bummer with this bishop potentially opening up. For example, you can't play g5 anymore. That was the nice thing about having the knight on e6. And kind of a reason I was thinking maybe you should play knight h7, even though that's an ugly looking move. So Theodore, he likes positions like this. h5, and once we break this down, this bishop is going to come. And f4 is controversial for 2 reasons. 1, the bishop's just going to go to d4. And 2, this bishop is going to be able to go to d4.
In that variation,
yeah. Let's do a thought experiment, though. Could black do this? With the intention that if bishop d4, g5 could maybe be done. This scares me. But it's possible. One reason it scares me is on f4, maybe we could do like this. Snip, snip, check, takes, with rook f1 coming.
All right, so blunder to bishop. How to simply hold.
I
look
don't
very
know.
dangerous,
It
but
looks
yeah.
really scary.
Yeah, somehow I need.
We even allow this check, and we're saying I don't care. Here's a turnaround though. Look at this one: knight f5, rook, king e7.
Just running away.
Because we're gonna have rook h8 next.
Wow.
The game might not even be over. I don't know what's going on. For example, rook f5, rook h8, rook f7. Let's try that one. Snip, snip, snip. You got to believe in black here, though. You got to believe in black.
That's true, but also a great point by old Uncle Bob. White is under a lot of time pressure. If you take a look at those clocks here, with only 2 minutes to 12.
And
This is
f4
becoming
was
more
played.
difficult to play.
F4 was played,
Excellent,
and you
so
know,
we're gonna see this.
I don't know Theodore that well, but I know him well enough that he is dreaming about h takes g. He is dreaming about that move. The good news for him is I still very much believe in the position.
If you take on g6, can I just take back right away with my knight?
You could,
No, for no fun in games.
But the dream of f4, I think, is that on bishop d4 that I say no, you can't actually open me up.
All right, and if we just play f3,
You know what, though?
just shut it all down here.
I don't believe in this g5 move. I just want to retract that because look at this. Something like this? Now, this is too frightening for me. I don't want any part of this. That's too scary. So bishop d. So the good news for Theodore is
so in
even
this position f3 though.
with on f3.
Yeah, just right after bishop to d4.
There's a lot to be afraid of here.
Oh boy.
Yeah. Obviously, I can just do bishop f1 if I want to chill out, but bishop takes f3 scares me. Scares me a lot.
It's crazy. It's too hard with less than a minute on your clock. You can see him.
Oh,
there.
Theodore, let's stay
Check
with
him
here
out there
just
on the
a
camera.
second here. Oh yeah, there's the camera. Here he goes.
What
H
move
takes
are-
G.
All
H takes
right.
G.
We're gonna see
I don't know
it.
if that was right, but
We're gonna see it.
Theodore doesn't care. He just wants to go crazy.
What
on
move
you.
are we on here, by the way?
We are
I gotta
on
get to move 40 if they're not there yet.
move H takes G. Move that was so he's got 5 more moves.
5 more moves in this critical, tough position.
And all right, let's review our analysis. Savin has a lot of time, so snip. Okay. Now, if you snip back immediately, I'm going to assume that knight g6, no problems for black.
Yes,
Right.
you want to toss your check in.
So, right, fe3, check to the miserable king, over. Pawn takes, and here was the variation I was talking about. Queen g3, king h1, knight f5. And if this is correct, I'm not certain this is correct, but if this is correct,
Yes.
then Zavin missed his chance because he very quickly took on g6, which, as we were
that's the
saying,
safe option. Yeah.
I don't know if it's that safe because now bishop h5, and like we're saying with the light squares, whew, the light squares they're a hungry beast.
Oh boy.
And the good news for Theodoro, he made this move quickly, so he got some more time. I thought there's a big chance that Savin missed, that I think he trusted his opponent in this position. And one thing from the game with Eugene is Theodoro is a genius. He is an attacking genius, but he shouldn't necessarily be trusted in his calculations. So I think H takes G, I'm going to guess it was a bluff. And now I don't know. I guess.
Right. So I suppose I'll defend my knight. I don't know. Queen c6.
Okay, so there's 2 options. Protecting the knight somehow, and also f3. This taking is actually kind of interesting. For example, here in king takes.
You're brave.
For example, maybe rook f8. Let's just say rook f8, king g2, and rook f3. Or rook f6 is... No, yeah, rook f3. Sure.
All right, so we have like queen e6 here.
Queen e6, queen
King
h7,
F8.
and play king f8, yeah. in addition to rook f3, he could play, I assume, rook f6, but rook f3 feels more macho. Right?
Yeah, look at that.
Oh, by the way, Ben is still doing his commentary. He's going to be back tomorrow. I say commentary all the time. He is announcing. And I was thinking maybe for my World Wrestling title fame shot, I should be El Macho.
El Macho. That's a great one.
I think El Macho.
Are you big into wrestling?
No.
Do you ever?
No, but I love the idea of being El Macho.
That's a great nickname. I think we should start calling him that.
I want to be El
in
Macho.
The chat. You only refer to Jesse as El Macho from here on out for the rest of the show.
So here we are, Bishop h5, and Savin thinking about it. So we had fe. Actually, it looks very pleasant, doesn't it? Queen c6 is the other one. But it seems to me, well, this is another funny thing about Bishop h5, honestly, because there was no rush. Well, wait, I take it back. There was a little bit of a rush, because the fear was if Bishop d4, then I'm going to shut you down.
Yeah, I'm worried about f3 right away.
Right.
There.
So Bishop h5 happened, and I think if you don't take on e3, let's say we do your move, Queen c6, then Bishop, Bishop d4 is going to happen.
All right, El Macho is catching on, though, for the record.
All right. And this looks, I guess I'd rather be white here, right?
Would you?
I'm going to play things like King h1 and bring the rook on over.
So tough.
Yeah, I think that rook coming to g1 is a big deal. So let's.
But even if I don't know, is there anything really going on? If I just take on d4, for example.
All right.
And you obviously take back.
Sure.
What's going on here? Am I in any worry here as black? Is white in any worried? What's going on here?
All I know is white has a plan. It's called putting the rook on g1.
Yeah, I understand. And I'm moving my king. I'm swinging my rooks in, and
Yeah.
rook's going to h8, and who knows?
What do you want to do? You want to do like king g7?
Yeah,
That's
king g7.
That's a natural move. Let's try that. So king h1, maybe h2, but I put on h1.
Sure, I'll swing my rook over. Rook h8.
All right, good. Swing. There's a lot of swinging going on. Rook h6.
Rook h6, yeah.
A lot of swinging. Rook g5.
You're going to double on me. How dare you?
You could try doubling yourself. You could do other things.
All right.
I think maybe I don't know.
Yeah,
where
rook
I should have
h6 might not have been any good.
Maybe I should have played king h2 as well, because at some point I might want to really do the full hack, and I win your queen, and I want to protect my queen or something.
Sure.
Yeah, it's a mess, but you see what I'm saying.
But it's going to be tough for...
We're just going to put the rooks over there.
I would just hate to play this with a minute on my clock.
Well, but the good news for Savin is he hasn't done it yet, and
Yes, where are we?
I think this looks good. So snip, snip, snip. You're going to have to take that thing.
The chat is asking me now. So what if rook takes h5 instead of rook h6? So I don't know if we can get... So that must have been after the queen c6 variation.
Okay, I will do that, but I just want to show this position one more time just to double check if I was, if I was speaking correctly.
Sure.
Maybe, it just, wherever you put your king, this bishop on g7 is a great defender.
For sure. Yeah.
Maybe king e2 is the way to go with it. And then whether you play rook f6 or you play rook f3, let's, for example, say rook f3. Maybe I can dream about some kind of thing like rook g1, rook f1, and maybe actually a better check is to check you here. Can't really go to h8 because of rook h1, and then maybe rook f1.
Seems reasonable.
And and it's not so simple for what black is supposed to do. He can't play queen takes c5 because he's going to get mated.
I play queen f4. Defend my rook.
Yeah, queen f4 looks like a good move, yeah. And you're threatening queen e3.
I'm making threats.
Yeah. Yeah, the party's continuing. The party's continuing.
There's
here.
also queen h2 check. You got to think about this. There's a lot of good potential.
Yeah, queen h2 check actually kind of hurts me. So this, even with king... I mean, it feels like this should be good for black, right? And black has, the nice thing too is black has more than one option to think about once he gets here. I have a feeling, I don't want to take this pawn check, but that might also, I don't want to do
good?
it. Yeah, I don't... Because I need the rook. I'm going to need the rook on the f file so that later I can block this. Because he is going to get to h7, right? But I don't want to allow that rook over there.
I hear you.
Yeah. All right, we do have a move. It is a move I did not expect.
Okay.
After bishop h5, black played the pretty amazing looking rook to e5.
Rook to e5.
Let's get an update.
So
here.
yeah, so if bishop takes knight, he's playing rook g5.
Let's take a look. Yeah, bishop takes knight. I still liked fe better, but this might... Well, okay. So
and
let's
in time
say...
trouble, playing a nice tactical move as always gives him something to think about. You only got a couple more seconds, and now you got to figure out all this and see if black's
Yeah,
bluffing about
okay.
anything.
So one bummer for white is that, if I go king h1, when I take here, I will have the additional threat of rook h6.
Yep.
So we do have that on the board. Bishop takes g6 anyways. Savin,
So yeah,
I want to say Savin, I think, is playing this a little too quickly. He played, he's already done a couple moves too quickly, and he's doing this thing where you're playing in your opponent's time trouble. Everybody does it. Like, they get so juiced up when your opponent's, like, getting down to the couple seconds. You just want to hit him with the move and say, what, can you think about it now? But this is the point where Savin, I think, can knock him out. So this would be a time to really make sure that you take Theodore out. Let's go through. He hasn't played rook g5 yet.
yeah.
Let's think about what he's worried about. It looks good.
Looks very good.
I mean, this is an ugly move, but let's try it out. King f1. Just so that after takes, I don't want to get slammed with rook h6.
For sure, yeah.
Right?
What are you doing here? It's white.
Yeah, I need a good move.
This is your bishop's attacked.
Let's do the natural one.
Alrighty. At some point, I want to play f3. I'm trying to figure out if I should, because I'd like to do something like bishop takes d4 and pawn takes, queen g7. But then I notice, while I'm trying to threaten some sort of rook g1, I notice your king might be escaping to e2.
The
So
f3
I am
move.
wondering about f3.
The f3 move
Maybe
looks
here.
very good. Yeah. Because now, like, this is a mate threat.
So
Oh, this is no bueno, right?
if f3 is quite
I don't
stronger,
know.
then,
And we do have rook takes g6 on the board, and
Okay.
Theodore is in a rough spot now.
yeah, I have no idea what you do here as white.
And king f1 was played,
Okay.
so it makes sense, right, on h. But the problem, right, with the f1 square is now your rook can never fight for the g file. So white's rooks really are shut out of the picture, and it's like he's going to be playing with a queen and bishop, defending his king against all these pieces, plus these two bad boys here on f4 and e4.
What move are we on now?
We got two moves to make,
Oh,
and
boy.
Theodore,
This is
it's really pretty gross. One argument for bishop d2, which is, I mean, you're clearly suffering if you play that move, but after f3, your bishop would at least touch h6.
this for the standings is going to be huge. If we can see Zavin win this game
Right.
here, they're both in the lead. We remember we had the four players with 3.5 points.
Bishop d4 was
So-
played.
The winner here would jump out to a 4.5 point, 1 full point lead.
And I think f3 is kind of a game ender, unless I'm missing something. It just looks like, whoa. Look, that rook on g6 is I mean, it's doing a lot. It's not only, threatening rook h6, but this is a nice check to not allow.
Yeah, the rook has a lot of functions there.
And it's just so pleasurable to put the pawn there. Yeah. Opening up the queen.
Just
the
no
rook
time to run
h6
away.
threat.
There's no real time to move your rook on e1 and get that king out of there just with rook h6 coming.
I'm going to say that's toast f3. And Savin's going to think about it a little bit. Oh, look at that. Look at that aggressive position over the board.
Yeah,
He's got his eyes on the mate
He's
right
feeling
there.
it.
Honestly, that's a little too far over. Theodore needs to say, hey, buddy, that's my board too. Give me a little space.
Well, how do you really feel? I mean, it is his turn, in
Uh-huh.
all fairness. Do you mind when people are encroaching on their turn? I understand your turn, but...
I mean, a little like that, that's okay. But yeah, a little too far. You can't go.
A little too far for you?
You can't be putting your lips on the bishops and stuff. Right? That's not okay. All right, let's move elsewhere. I'm going to assume F3, and that game's going to be toast.
We might be coming back to that one quickly if we get a handshake soon.
Victor, we haven't checked in on old Victor. This has been a very interesting game for a while now, and it looks. I know Victor really well. It's going to be would have been a time scramble to reach this position, and. What do you think? Is it a draw, or does somebody have a chance?
Same number of pawns? I never learned to count, but it appears that everybody's got 4 pawns. So it does look like white has a lot of pawn islands compared to black. But, yeah, these are always so hard to win.
I think black is the one who's playing for it, right?
For sure, yeah. I mean, you just got the better structure. Pieces are more active. I mean, you got the pawn on A4. My bishop's, if I'm black, I'm staring at your pawn. Mm-hmm. Yeah, black is for choice. I don't know if it's how serious it is, though.
Yeah, and black can think about putting a king, bringing the king maybe to d6. Even if he gives up on the a4 weakness and plays a move like b5 and then to roll the pawns, that also looks dangerous. So Big Mick, this was a fascinating game. He's in trouble, and Robbie plays a nice move, I think. At least first glance, it looks nice. c4, and now Big Mick's gonna have to take. And now we got 2 connected passed pawns.
That looks very good for black.
And in the books, they usually say that's a big deal.
That's very serious stuff here.
B5, B4 is coming real fast.
And that looks to Zaid Khan for keeping the El Macho going.
El Macho, yeah.
El Macho, the superhero, enters the tournament hall.
Ben was kind of cagey about like who he was when he was an announcer, like if he had the paint on and stuff, if he wore like maybe a spandex suit.
I have asked him if there's video. So far, he has not presented me with anything. I don't even know if he really does wrestling announcing. I've never seen any proof.
I think he does some wrestling. Because you can hear it in his voice when he does the chess commentating. He's like, all right, on board for coming off the top rope with the spandex pink suit. Like that, he likes to do it that way.
Yeah, definitely an honor to fill in for the great Ben Simon, who, as a reminder, will be back tomorrow and the last round.
Let's take a look at this Timur game, and Timur might be skydiving for us.
All right, there we
go.
go.
He might actually be skydiving.
Come on, I still have more pawns than you.
Well, right.
All the stuff's gone.
Your whole philosophy of being a pawn grubber is paying off.
Easy. Took on C7, lived to tell the tale. Easy win.
Let's take a look at how this happened. We left around F4, and he played the move I suggested, the Queen D5, Knight F5. Okay, so the knight is going to come back. Well, the knight doesn't even have to go anywhere right now. For one, he's threatening Knight E7. I'm going to say Timur's a tricky dude. So here, all of a sudden, this knight, which was terrible, is now creating some drama. Queen D7, H3. Just nice and calm. Put your pawns opposite the square of the bishop. And now you're going to do what? You're going to trade off your beautiful knight? Rook D2. Oh, man.
That's a good one.
Van Forest, what happened, buddy? He skydived on you.
I know. Well, he got one active piece, and then everything came off.
I still believe in black. I want to believe in black, but... Oh. So it's the stupid knight on A4, and there's... Oh, what a bummer. Knight B6, and he feels forced to trade this off. This should be winning, I think. Yeah. We're going to play E4 someday, and the reason that bishops are often stronger than knights, actually there's a simple rule that my sensei Smyslov says, if there are passed pawns running on both sides, then the bishop is going to be stronger because he's the long-range piece. If it's a blockading position, then the knight can have chances of being better. This, to me, especially because it looks like we're going to achieve E4, means that it's bad news.
Oh, yeah, you can even play it right there without King F3.
Well, I hope our broadcast doesn't end. This is probably going to go on for a while. It looks like White's winning, but we might have to do the skydiving video. And this would mean that Timur would actually be able to jump up back into
huge. And if we remember, too, he was unable to make it here for the first round because he was playing in another tournament, and that went a little bit long, and he couldn't make a flight. So to start with a forfeit in round one and still be this close to coming back and getting at least close to the leaders would be remarkable. 2 wins in a row would be fantastic for him.
Let me show you a bummer variation for black. I mean, imagine King F7, and you could say, oh, I'm going to get my knight in, and then Timur would say no.
Oh, no.
And then I'm going to snip your pawn, too.
Oh, how dare you. Stop.
It's not very nice, I'm telling you. Okay, let's go on. These are some good games. We need to check in on old Eugene here. A lot of stuff has gone down. We just reached time control. I'm sure it was hectic. Right. Oh, man, oh, man.
Rook and bishop versus lots of pawns.
Let's go to that b5 move. All right, so
what
b5, he snipped.
Okay.
Black snipped. Check to the miserable king. King h8. Okay, so we're getting some notions here about this queen controlling this. I'm doubtful.
Need a heavy piece on the H file, please.
I'm doubtful that this was right with the way Benjamin did this. Check to the queen. Check to the king. Check. Rook h4. It's becoming a little unpleasant.
Yeah, look at that.
I have a feeling that was missed in time pressure.
Yeah,
so
Rook
if
h4,
queen takes,
quite the move.
check, and zap. So Rook h4, Queen
Rook h4,
g2.
beautiful move.
Rook h2, hello. Queen g4, Rook h4. Interesting.
Funny perpetual, but it didn't end there.
Look at this. It is Joel who decides he wants to go for it here.
Wow.
I don't know, Joel. I don't know, buddy.
All right, so we saw it till about here, and you decided to go for it, huh?
Ooh. All right, I have to think about it a second. I do think he's right that he shouldn't lose. So that had to be part of it. It'd be like, rather than a draw, I'm going to take this because I feel like I can't lose, especially because it's going to be hard for white to hold on to the f2 pawn. And, you know, we're still going to, we have an obvious plan of doing things like a5 and b4.
So who do you like here? I mean, this is really a tough one to evaluate.
Well, at first I thought Joel was insane. I'm going to admit it. But the more I look at it, I do believe that he should be at least okay. Because, right, we make that pawn move. It's frightening for both sides, but it should be, here we are, we just reached move 40. Again, we shouldn't be too critical of weird moves like in the run-up to move 40. Both players are going to have very little time. I'm going to guess it's going to be hard to win this. Let me put it this way, because white will always, whenever black tries to do something active, white will have very good chances for a perpetual. And of course, there's chances for black to lose it all too. For example, if we could achieve f4, f5, and maybe knock a pawn out. It should still be totally within the drawing range. That was actually a very impressive move for Benjamin, because think about it, he had been suffering for quite a long time, and then white is essentially offering a draw. White was in some time pressure too, and he says, all right, let's go down this road.
Crazy stuff.
And Joel lost, has had a couple brutal rounds, so yeah, this is really inspiring. And now white just played queen a5. Could become a little annoying if the point is, oh wow, yeah, the point is maybe it's not so, no, it's not going to be that hard either. Bishop d4. Okay, let's look. This is some good games today. Yeah, Timur looks like he's winning, but we're going to check in. Victor looks like he's toast. And Theodore, let's look in Savin. F3 was played, and Theodore's probably thinking,
oh wait, they've reached the time control. I see they got a lot more time there.
And honestly, one thing I don't quite get is, why would you take? Maybe it doesn't matter, but I'd rather just, because I'm not afraid of him taking on g7, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's the question too. I was trying to figure out for myself if I had to or not. And I guess ultimately I said, yeah, just f3, because you take me, I'll play queen takes g7.
F3 is so devastating, honestly, that I don't think it matters, right? Like queen g7 is coming, whether it's no matter what. So that looks like, yeah, Theodore. Sometimes when you live by the sword, you die by the sword.
That's the risks you take in chess.
These are the risks you take. All right, a lot of the big boys have drawn their games. Let's take a look in at our key matchup. And things have definitely happened, and they're getting hot. So when we left, we were right around here, and white made the ambitious move f4.
Oh, right.
This will further
G5
weaken.
stopped me, but I did it. I played f4.
Right, so this will further weaken the dark squares and make it so that that bishop e5, h2 diagonal is going to be a permanent problem.
Yeah, I don't
But at least
wonder
we're
about this.
changing the structure of the game a little bit, and white is ultimately hoping for counterplay. So let's look at how it happened. Snip, check to the knight, knight c6. The black
Okay.
king gets out of the way of knight e7 checks. Queen f2. So think about it. The knight here is stopping the bishop from going where he wants to go. If you take the knight, as Jeffrey ambitiously did, you are, of course, running into dc. Boom, bishop d4. So even though the bishop came off, the attack is continuing there on the dark squares. I don't know what's happening.
I have no idea. And it's funny, too, that we can trade queens by pushing, in theory.
Well, remember, when you do that, you lose a pawn.
I know. And I hate that. You
It's
know
a
how much
bummer,
I hate
yeah.
losing all my pawns.
But let me just make a naive move to see if we can understand what's going on with queen f3.
All right.
So if you do, first of all, if you try to put me in a cage, I don't think it's going to work because I'm going to play a thing like knight e2.
Okay.
I'm going to cover my business. So if you go for it, isn't my king just kind of saying, oh, I can run up and play
Big
like
deal.
king
You gotta
f5
pass
or
pawn.
something? Yeah. So in the game, queen d2 was played, and that might
Oh,
even
queen d2
just,
looks good.
also just maybe a simple way. Really, you know, the funny decision. Let's go back to here. First question, is white threatening anything in this position? Hard to see what it would be, right? Maybe knight h5 is a concern. But, so anyways, this is a very committal decision.
Oh, yeah.
Because that pawn is now, it's real.
Mm-hmm.
It's a real pawn, and after you lose the bishop, your king is pretty
I like
loosey-goosey
queen d2
too.
here, though.
Yeah, queen d2 is a simple move. Oh man, Jeffrey might lose this game.
That'd be huge.
Well, that would
Our
almost
tournament
be,
leader is almost running away with this.
it would be really close to tournament over.
Yeah, there's 2 rounds after this.
Yeah, and Quesada got so
So
lucky
being up a half
yesterday.
point coming in, you can take down Jeffrey Zhong. Oh, boy.
All right, a game we have not spent any time on, need to talk about, is Ray against Samuel Sevian. And, oh man, we got ourselves a slugfest. First impressions, what do you got for me?
Seems good for white. Whose turn is it? Looks like black's clock is ticking.
It's black's
That's
turn.
good. Otherwise, I really liked white.
Isn't there cause for concern here for Mr. White? We got like this
What's
pawn on
going on
g3
here?
that I guess we could snip right now.
Yeah, I'll take it. I love taking pawns. It's my favorite.
I thought you were a pawn grubber. Isn't,
taking it.
Isn't
It's hanging. I take it. I'm a genius.
Let's look at what the White's last move was, because he now
Okay,
could
interesting,
have
yeah.
played a move like Queen f4 to hold on to the pawn. Instead, he is doing this, which looks frightening.
I take it. I love taking things.
Well, the question is, like, why did he let us take it? And wait, I don't really understand this move. Because Queen f6 doesn't really threaten anything on its own accord, right? And you're letting me take this one and that one on g3.
I'm so
I don't-
excited.
I don't get
I'm
it.
taking so much stuff here. It's so exciting.
I don't get it. That's a really weird move. Okay, is there something horrendo with Queen f4? Like, is there some just incredible...
I don't know, maybe it's just, no. I mean, somehow I'm going to double, I'm trying to double on the first rank here probably. I don't know if it matters which rook I start with, but rook
But-
c1
but
check and then rook b1.
How does queen f6 help you defend against all that?
This is...
Oh, maybe I have a notion. It's desperation mode, and he's saying, okay, you can take that stuff, but you're not going to make, you won't be able to utilize this rook, because I am hoping for some kind of perpetual
looking
check.
for a queen d8 at the end.
Right, and if you go king h7, I have check here, and if you ever go g7, I have check on f6. Okay.
Very nice. So that's
It took
must
me
be the
forever
idea.
to
All right.
get it, but
They
that's
had more
the
time than
idea.
us.
So we're going to check in on that. I'm going to guess that Samuel is going to find something there. It looks totally brutal. Now another game we haven't had time to think about for a while is this game with Sasi and Modulev.
Okay.
And Sasi's still got his extra pawn,
Very
but he's
exciting.
down the exchange. So let's look at how this developed. We're back around here. We predicted c4, right?
At some point, yeah. We
So
knew C4
there was
gonna come.
c4, and the a4 pawn's weak, and the white's pawns are definitely better. So there's definitely compensation. Knight g6, g3. A real bummer for that knight. Rook f5. White's just doing a nice, just little dance here with all these pieces. And there it is. There's the exchange it's going to go. Yeah, he's not even in a hurry to take the thing. Okay, so at least on first glance, it looks like white has enough. However, or white is for choice. However, it's a situation where it's going to be hard to actually break in, right? To use your rooks to actually penetrate in some meaningful way. Oh, man. And so here we are. I think what Sasi is going to try to say here is that there's nothing white... I don't know if he's saying it, but he's definitely hoping it. That there's no way for white to break through, and that his knight is going to be able to jump around. The bishop will sit there on d6 for a while, but the knight will jump around. So queen e8 was played. Yeah, I mean, I think I like white better, but, knight g6 stuff is going to happen. And if we want, we can put a knight d4, we can play knight d5, we can think about queen b5. Yeah, this is a real position.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, still a lot to go in this game.
Right. Jeffrey's still thinking about his problems. All right. And Savin just played queen g7. So that looks like a brutal win. I can't imagine that it's just, you're going to have to start marching with the king here. He doesn't want to do it, but he's going to have to. Actually, a real bummer for Theodore. Theodore is not only playing for places, he's playing for the GM norm.
Yeah.
And so
very
this
important
will hurt that. Victor looks toast over here after c4. And very nice move, c4. You could put this actually in an endgame book to show, like an endgame puzzle book. And then you just need to, once you see it, that you're going to snip the pawn, it's an obvious thing at that point.
Very nice, yeah.
Van Forest is putting up a valiant defense, trying to say no-go with the stuff over there. He's just
It's a
coming.
pretty picture with the pawns hanging on e4 and g4, but can't really.
Well, okay.
I mean, you can take one.
I assume Black's going to play king f7. And this is, okay, maybe it's not totally done. Let's imagine I snip. And I snip. Let's look at knight f5. c6. Let's look at a6. You could also play a5. Okay, just to show.
Okay.
If knight takes c7, I'm running.
Yeah, that's bad.
Right. So, okay, we'll get it. No, we're not going to get aggressive. We're going to just play a6 just to see what we can do here. Several moves. Bishop c5 looks like the most natural. To cut the knight. Right? He's cutting all of the knight's entry squares.
Sure, yeah.
let's say king e6 looks forced, and after a move like king f3, it definitely looks like trouble. Because the knight has trouble moving, and I don't think you'd do king d5 because of c7.
Right, yeah. And anywhere the knight goes to stop the pawn, the bishop's going to take it.
Right. So, good defense.
There we go. We got a handshake here on the board.
Yeah, that was a good game. Lots of good games today.
And yeah, unfortunately, due to time, we will have to take just one last quick peek around the horn here.
Yeah. Let's look at Joel's game. So one thing we should say is this is pleasant for black, because imagine we took all the pawns off the board, then for sure it's a fortress, right? But that extra pawn means that we have dreams, and it's, there's
so
real
tough.
questions about, like, you got to defend against rook c2 stuff. The bishop is working very well with the light square pawns. And now king f7 was played. And that was the most ambitious move, just because we want to keep this bishop on this diagonal. Oh, he got drunk a little bit. On that diagonal, so that we can talk to the white king a little bit. So I think Perelshteyn had a very rough game last night. He drew, but it was very rough. He had this miserable knight on a8. I was making fun of him all night long. So here he's going to suffer. He came out into the analysis room and his eyes were red, underneath the lids there.
Oh boy, that chess is tough.
Chess is tough, and I think he's in for another one.
Yeah.
All night here, and it's such a bummer because he had a nice position. I assumed he was winning. I encourage everyone to keep following the games. We're going to go off the air in a little bit. There's Jeffrey. He's looking at this position. I think he looks like he miscalculated something amazing. I don't see how you stop it. Like, let's say you go back with either the queen or the bishop, you're going to have to start wondering about knight d5.
Knight d5 is coming for sure.
Right? I don't know what you're supposed to do. So that looks like, it's a real bummer for Jeffrey.
I know.
He would fall to +1 after such a beautiful start.
I know.
We were talking about him reaching 2,700 this tournament and all this stuff. The dreams are hard. Samuel
it's not
is
easy
thinking
getting to
about
2,700.
No.
That's the takeaway, huh?
Samuel's thinking about this position. I'm going to guess that he will find a way through. And this game, I'm also going to guess, is going to go the distance. Modulev, a really beautiful classical player, has some weaknesses around his king, and he's going to believe that he's better here, and I believe he's better as well. So yeah, let's leave it there, and we'll be back tomorrow with I'm El Macho, and I don't know what Ben's actual name is. One thing, you guys, see, he's cagey with us, but if you ask him in the chat,
right,
I think he will he'll feel like he has to respond. You just ask him in the chat.
So please do. So please come back tomorrow. It starts again at the same time. So for those in the Central Time Zone, that is 3:30 p.m. I'm Jonathan Schrantz. That's El Macho. We had a great show. Do stay, watch the rest of the games, and tomorrow we will have Ben Simon returning.
And go Fabi.
For sure.
This has been a presentation of the St. Louis Chess Club.